The new section of work covers reconciliation of debtors and creditors control accounts. What is reconciliation? Let's go and find out. My definition of reconciliation is that it's just a fancy way of saying that a business must ensure their debtors control account is equal to their debtors list and their creditors control account is equal to their creditors list at the end of each month. Can you remember us saying that over and over in class, that the balance brought down on the first of the next month for debtors or creditors control must always be the same as the total of the list? Let's go and look at some theory. We know that a business has two different sections that deal with debtors and creditors. A debtors and creditors control account and debtors and creditors ledgers. The control accounts are found in the general ledger. The debtors and creditors ledgers are used to compile the debtors and creditors lists. The debtors and creditors control column totals in all of our journals are posted to these control accounts in the general ledger at the end of the month. Whenever we have a transaction with a debtor or creditor and we record it in any of the journals, we transfer that transaction immediately to the debtor or creditor's individual account in the ledger. The debtors and creditors control accounts give us summaries of all of the transactions with debtors and creditors for the month so that we can see the bigger picture. But the debtors and creditors ledgers gives us up-to-date information about individual debtors or creditors accounts. I call it the little black book, so that at any point in time, you know exactly how much every debtor owes you and how much you owe every creditor. What's important about these two sections is that they shouldn't be done by the same person. And the main reason for this is it's a form of internal control to avoid fraud. Sometimes the balances of the control accounts and the list are not the same, and then we should find out why and we need to fix it. That is what we call reconciliation. Now, you might wonder, why would the balances not be the same? Well, it's simple. They're not posted by the same person, and they're not even posted at the same time. The control accounts are posted at the end of the month, and the debtors and creditors ledgers are posted throughout the month. Okay, so if they are not the same, where do you start? Well, we've got a 4-step process that's quite simple that you need to follow. Step 1, you need to start with the obvious stuff. The biggest mistake that all of us accountants make is that our calculations are sometimes inaccurate. So you need to rebalance the control accounts and retotal the list. In your handout, this example was given to you. And if you carefully look at the debtors list, there was a calculation error. It shouldn't have been 82,500. If you recalculate it, you will get the 87,500 that is equal to the balance brought down in the debtors control account. Step 2. Check that all the items in the debtors or creditors control accounts are on the correct side. Now, sometimes inexperienced bookkeepers, not you guys, because you know your layouts, but sometimes they post things on the wrong side of the account, and then you need to fix that. For example, in your handout, we gave you this creditors control account, and you know that total allowances means that we are returning stuff to our creditors. So it should go to the debit side where creditors control decrease. And if you move that, if you put it on the debit side, then suddenly you will see your new balance of your creditors control account is the same as your creditors list. Step 3. You need to check that all of your journal totals in your control account have been correctly calculated and correctly posted. Now, this step is a little bit tricky and you won't know if we don't tell you. So we will give you enough information to pick this up. For example, in your handout, for this debtors control account and debtors list, we gave you an adjustment there at the bottom that says the total of the debtors journal is 121,600 and has been verified as correct. But if you look at it in the debtors control account, the value for sales DJ was incorrectly recorded or posted as 118,600. So if you fix that, if you change it to 121,600 and you rebalance your account, you will see that suddenly your balance brought down on the 1st of May is 87,500, which is equal to your debtors list. Last step is that you have to check that all the entries and balances in the debtors and creditors ledgers are correct, because this will affect the list's total. Once again, information will be given to you. The example in the handout looks like this, and if you look there at the bottom, it says an adding mistake had occurred in Macro's account. The account should be 4,180. But if you look at Macro, in the creditors list, it says 4,680. If you fix that, then the total of your creditors list is suddenly 98,260, which is the same as your balance brought down in your creditors control account. And then everything is in balance. Now, this is the question that you always love to ask us. How will this be asked in an exercise or a test? Okay, so you've got two options. We can either give you the debtors or creditors control account and the ledger and the list, like we've done in all of these previous examples, and you need to find and fix mistakes. Now, this is easy because it's usually calculation or layout errors. The second option is we can give you adjustment entries to record in the control account or in the list or in both the control account and the list. And when you've done all of the adjustments, it would fix the fact that the two are not equal. Okay, so these adjustment entries are almost like correction of errors in the general journal. And this is a little bit tricky because you need to figure out if the mistake affects the control account or the list or both before you can fix it. Okay, so how will you know if an error affects the control account, the list, or both? My tip to you is you need to find out where in the accounting process was the error made. I know that doesn't really make sense. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 simple rules that you can follow. Rule number 1. If the error is on the source document, then everything is wrong because the source document is the starting point for the entire accounting process. Okay, for example, the amount on an invoice issued to a debtor was undercast by 200 Rand. In other words, the invoice that the accountant used to record this in the DJ was wrong. So it was posted to the debtor's ledger incorrectly and at the end of the month to the general ledger incorrectly. Okay, so you have to go and add 200 Rand to the sales value on the debit side of debtors control. And you have to go and add 200 Rand to the specific debtor who we sold the products to on credit in the debtors list. Rule number 2. If the accountant recorded the transaction incorrectly, then everything is wrong. Because if the transaction was incorrectly recorded in the journal, it would have been incorrectly posted from the journal to the debtors or creditors ledger. And at the end of the month, it would have been incorrectly posted from the journal to the debtors or creditors control account. For example, a credit note issued to a debtor was incorrectly recorded in the DAJ as 300 Rand instead of 260 Rand. So we said that a debtor sent goods back with 300 Rand when he only sent goods back with 260 Rand. This would cause our debtors allowances column in the DAJ to be overstated. So we need to go and decrease that value on the credit side of the debtors control account. And in the debtors list, we have to go and add the 40 Rand back to that balance that the debtor owes us, because we decrease his account with 40 Rand more than we should have. Rule number 3. If the accountant posted the transaction to the wrong debtor or creditor, it will be a general journal transaction. So we have to fix it in the control account and the list. Let's look at this example. A debit note, remember debit notes goes to the CAJ, of 320 Rand was issued to Lumox suppliers. In other words, we sent goods back to Lumox suppliers. It was correctly entered in the CAJ, but it was incorrectly posted to Leroux suppliers in the creditors ledger. So we debited the wrong creditor. To fix this in the general journal, we will do the following. We will go and debit Lumox suppliers because we actually sent stuff back to them, and credit Leroux suppliers. This will affect the creditors control column on the debit and credit side. And in other words, your total journal debits from the GJ will go up with 320, and your total journal credits in the creditors control account from the GJ will also go up with 320. So it affects your control account. In the creditors list, we have to go and fix the balances of these two creditors. We have to go and deduct 320 Rand from Lumox, and we have to go and add the 320 Rand back to Leroux. This won't have an effect on the balance, like the total balance overall, because it's plus 320 minus 320, but you still need to fix it. Rule number 4. If the accountant posted the amount incorrectly to the debtors or creditors account in the debtors or creditors ledger, you only fix the list. In other words, if the journal is perfect, but in the process when the journal transaction was taken to the debtors or creditors ledger, the amount was posted incorrectly, then you only fix the list, because the journal is perfect, so the control account is still perfect. For example, an amount of 2,350 Rand in the CJ was posted as 3,250 to the account of ACD traders. So the only problem is ACD traders account was credited with 900 Rand more than it should have been. So you decrease the account of ACD traders in the creditors list. Rule number 5. If a column total in one of the subsidiary journals, that's just a fancy way of saying the journals, was incorrectly totaled, then you only fix the control account, because all of the individual transactions are perfect. And when they were taken throughout the month to the debtors and creditors ledgers, they would still be perfect. It's just the column total where there was an adding error. So you only fix the control account. For example, if the sales column in the DJ was undercast means it's too little, by 400 Rand, then you have to go and add that 400 Rand back on the debit side of the debtors control account. Overcast, on the other hand, would mean that it's too much. So then you would have had to subtract the 400 Rand. Now, this is quite a mouthful, and you might think, how on earth will you remember all of this? Well, luckily for you, there's a copy of the notes on Google Classroom that you can go and download.